Most high earners still feel broke. Today we fix that. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. You probably know someone, maybe a colleague, maybe a family member, maybe even yourself, who earns a decent salary. $60,000, $80,000, maybe even six figures. And yet, at the end of every month, there's almost nothing left. No savings, no investments. Just the quiet anxiety of wondering what would happen if one bad thing went wrong. How is that possible? How can someone earn more money in a year than entire generations of their family ever dreamed of, and still feel financially stuck? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. Not with motivational fluff, not with oversimplified advice. Just the actual mechanisms. The real reasons why income and wealth are two completely different things, and why most people never figure that out until it's too late. Income is not wealth. Repeat that. There's a fundamental confusion at the core of how most people think about money. They treat income and wealth as if they're the same thing. They're not even close. Income is a flow. It comes in, and if you're not careful, it goes right back out. Wealth is a stock. It's what accumulates when the flow of money in consistently exceeds the flow of money out, and the surplus is put to work. Here's the brutal truth. A person earning $40,000 a year who saves 20% of their income is building more wealth than someone earning $120,000 who spends every dollar. The math is unambiguous. The high earner looks wealthy. They drive a nicer car, live in a bigger house, wear better clothes. But on paper, in terms of actual net worth, they may be worth less than someone who earns a third of their salary. This is what economists call the difference between income and net worth. And it's the first reason why so many high earners stay poor. They confuse the appearance of wealth with the reality of it. They spend like they're rich before they actually are. And that gap between looking wealthy and being wealthy is exactly where financial security disappears. Section 2. Lifestyle inflation. Why raises vanish fast. Let's talk about something almost everyone has experienced but rarely names. Lifestyle inflation. You get a raise. You deserve it. You worked hard. And almost automatically, without a deliberate decision, your spending rises to meet your new income. You upgrade your apartment. You eat out more. You buy a newer car. You take a better vacation. None of those things are wrong. The problem is what doesn't happen. Your savings rate doesn't increase. You're earning more, but your financial progress stays exactly the same, because you've raised your ceiling and your floor simultaneously. Economists sometimes call this the hedonic treadmill. As your income rises, your expectations and your cost of living rise with it. You need more just to feel like you're in the same place. The goalposts keep moving, and you keep running. Here's a simple illustration. Imagine someone who earns $50,000 and saves $500 a month. They get promoted. They now earn $75,000. If their savings stays at $500 a month, they've added $25,000 to their income and kept exactly zero of it in wealth building. Every dollar of that raise went to a bigger lifestyle, not a bigger future. The antidote is what's sometimes called paying yourself first. Before lifestyle adjustments happen, locking in a higher savings rate immediately after any income increase. Not gradually, immediately, before your brain recalibrates what normal feels like. Section 3. The debt machine and how it compounds. If lifestyle inflation quietly drains wealth, debt actively destroys it. Most people understand debt in the abstract, but very few people have sat down and calculated exactly how much of their income is currently flowing directly into other people's pockets as interest payments. Consider the average American. Between car loans, credit card balances, student loans, and mortgages, a significant portion of monthly income is spoken for before a single lifestyle choice is made, and much of it, particularly credit card debt, carries interest rates north of 20%. Think about what a 20% interest rate means. If you carry a $5,000 credit card balance, you're paying roughly $1,000 a year just in interest. That's $1,000 that could have compounded in an investment. Instead, it's enriching the financial institution that issued your card. The especially cruel part is that debt is often used to fund consumption, things that depreciate or disappear, a vacation on a credit card, a car financed at a high rate, furniture purchased on installment. These are not investments. They create no future value. The item loses value or gets consumed, but the debt and the interest persist. There's also a psychological dimension. When you're in debt, you feel like you can't afford to save. You feel like you need to earn more first, pay down debt first, get stable first, and then you'll start building. That moment rarely comes, because new debt tends to replace old debt if the underlying pattern doesn't change. The hierarchy is simple and non-negotiable. High-interest debt must be eliminated before meaningful wealth building can begin, not alongside it. Before it, because no investment reliably returns 20% annually, which means every dollar sitting in savings while you carry 20% interest debt is actually a net loss. Section 4. The cost of looking wealthy. There's a force at work that nobody likes to talk about openly: social pressure. Humans are deeply social creatures. We signal our status through what we own, what we wear, where we live, and what we drive. And because we live in a consumer economy purpose-built to exploit that impulse, we are constantly being told, through advertising, through comparison, through social media, that who we are is reflected in what we buy. The result is a kind of financial performance. People spend money not because they need things or even because they particularly want them, but because they feel the social cost of not having them. They lease a car they can't afford because their neighbors drive something similar. They renovate a kitchen that was perfectly functional because it didn't look right for their income level. They buy clothes with logos that communicate success to strangers. The irony is devastating. The people most likely to be impressed by visible signs of wealth are often people in the same financial trap. Meanwhile, genuinely wealthy people, those with real, lasting net worth, are statistically more likely to live in modest homes, drive ordinary cars, and avoid conspicuous display. Not because they're cheap, but because they don't need external validation of their financial position. They know what their balance sheet says. Every dollar spent on performing wealth is a dollar not spent on building it. And over a lifetime, that compound cost is staggering. Section 5. Financial illiteracy. Closing the knowledge gap. Here's something worth sitting with. Most people were never taught how money actually works. Schools teach us algebra, literature, history. In most countries, they teach virtually nothing about personal finance, how compound interest works, what a tax-advantaged account is, how inflation erodes purchasing power, what the difference is between an asset and a liability, why the order in which you make financial decisions matters enormously. This isn't a character flaw, it's a structural gap. And into that gap step credit card companies, auto dealerships, and financial products with complex fee structures designed for the buyer who doesn't fully understand what they're signing. Financial literacy changes the math completely. Someone who understands compound interest doesn't wait to invest, because they understand that time is the most valuable variable in the equation. Money invested in your 20s doesn't just grow linearly. It doubles, then doubles again, then again. The same dollar invested at 25 versus 45 can be worth 5 to 10 times more by retirement. Not because of the amount, because of the time. Financial literacy also means understanding tax efficiency, knowing that the account you put money into can be as important as how much you put in. That there are legal structures designed specifically to reduce your tax burden while building wealth. That ignoring these is not neutral, it's leaving money on the table every single year. The knowledge gap is real, it's consequential, and filling it is one of the highest return activities a person can do. Section 6. The mindset trap. Patterns that hold you back. Beyond the mechanics of money, there are psychological patterns that keep people financially stuck, even when they have the income and knowledge to do otherwise. The first is scarcity mindset. When someone has spent years living paycheck to paycheck, their brain becomes conditioned to short-term thinking. Every financial decision gets evaluated against immediate relief, rather than long-term outcome. An unexpected expense gets put on a credit card because the alternative, drawing down savings, feels too uncomfortable. This isn't irrational in the moment. It's a survival adaptation. But it perpetuates a cycle that's very hard to break. The second is present bias, a well-documented cognitive tendency where humans consistently overvalue the present at the expense of the future. The same person who would rationally choose $1,000 in 5 years over $500 today will, in practice, spend the $500 today on something that gives immediate satisfaction. The future always feels abstract. The present is vivid and immediate. This is why automatic systems work so well for wealth building. A retirement contribution that's automatically deducted before you see the paycheck never triggers the present bias decision. You don't weigh it against today's desires because you never hold the money in your hands. Automation removes human psychology from the equation, which, when it comes to money, is often exactly what's needed. The third pattern is learned helplessness, a belief, often unconscious, that financial improvement isn't really possible for someone in your circumstances. That wealth is for other people, that the system is stacked against you. There's sometimes truth in this. Structural inequality is real, but it can also become a self-fulfilling prophecy that makes people stop trying, even when meaningful change is within reach. Breaking these patterns is harder than learning a financial concept. It requires confronting the stories you tell yourself about money, often stories you absorbed from your family, your community, or your experience of financial stress. But it's where the deepest change happens. Section 7. The practical path forward. Clear next steps. So what does the path out of this actually look like? Let's be specific. The first move is a clear-eyed audit of where money is actually going. Not a rough estimate. A real, line-by-line account of every recurring expense, every debt obligation, every subscription, every pattern of spending. Most people are genuinely surprised by what they find, not because they're reckless, but because 1,000 small decisions add up to a number they've never actually looked at. The second move is establishing a savings rate as a non-negotiable percentage of income, not a leftover amount. Savings should come out first, the same way rent comes out first. Most financial researchers suggest that a 15–20% savings rate over a working lifetime is sufficient to build meaningful financial security, assuming reasonable investment returns. The percentage matters less than the consistency and the immediacy. The third move is eliminating high-interest debt aggressively, not gradually, not eventually, as fast as possible. Debt with interest rates above what you could reasonably earn investing should be treated as an emergency, because mathematically it is. The fourth move is investing, not just saving. Money that sits in a low-interest account while inflation runs at 3–4% annually is losing purchasing power in real terms every year. Investing doesn't require sophisticated knowledge of stock picking or market timing. Low-cost index funds, which simply track broad market performance, have outperformed most actively managed funds over long time horizons. The key insight is that staying invested over time, including through downturns, is far more important than trying to time the market. The fifth move is increasing income. All of the above is about managing what comes in, but there's a ceiling to what frugality can achieve. Building skills, pursuing promotion, developing secondary income streams, these expand the numerator in the wealth equation. Over a career, the compounding effect of income growth alongside disciplined saving is where real wealth is built. None of this requires genius. None of it requires a privileged starting point. What it requires is clarity, consistency, and a willingness to delay some gratification today in exchange for real freedom later. Let's come back to where we started. Income is not wealth. A high salary is an opportunity, a powerful one, but it is not a guarantee of financial security. The people who turn income into wealth aren't necessarily smarter, more disciplined in some heroic sense, or luckier. They've simply understood a few fundamental things that aren't widely taught, made a few structural decisions early, and let time do the rest. The good news is that none of the mechanisms we've talked about today are mysterious. Lifestyle inflation is a choice, one you can make consciously rather than by default. Debt is a tool that can be managed or eliminated. Financial literacy is learnable. The psychological patterns that hold people back can be identified and interrupted. Most people stay poor, not because of bad luck and not because the game is entirely rigged, but because no one ever gave them a clear map. They were handed a salary, and left to figure out the rest in a system designed to extract money from people who don't know the rules. Now you know some of the rules. What you do with that is up to you.